Yeah, revolutionary greetings, comrades. Welcome to our revolutionary reading class. Of course, we meet on Sundays. It's a new class we are having. We meet on Sundays to read the book. Now we start with Dr. Iti's book, Defeating Dictators, and we hope to finish it and we go to other books. Of course, reading books virtually is an initiative that came up from various online or virtual libraries that we have that are sharing Pan-African books as well. From virtual library, we have other library like African Book Club, that's our WhatsApp library. We have another library called CSG Pan-African Library. So these are initiatives on, yes, we share books and people read, but how can we then come together and maybe have a reading, a communal reading or a united reading where we can be reading books together. So that's the brain behind us starting this reading club. The reading club is actually supported by the Zoom, it's hosted by Zoom of the Consciousness Study Group. We hosting for our reading, and members across the Pan-African divide are welcome to join us for the purpose of our reading. In that regard, permit me to welcome all of you once again. And as our traditions, we read and then we share our thinking and probably discuss our reading as well. So thank you very much and you're most welcome. Feel most welcome. Barry, Hegel, Chisomo, Hada, Sister Tapua, and Sawindo. Feel most welcome. And let us start our reading for today. Today we'll be starting with governance. We are looking at governance. We are looking at statelessness. We are looking at confederation, empires, and kingdoms. Who is ready to start the reading for us today? Somebody can read for us the governance, then somebody will read for us statelessness, like that. Who is in a position to read for us the highlighted text from governance?
I can read, if it's okay.
Hello, Sister Tapua. Yeah, feel most welcome. Yeah, read for us the governance, then we might get somebody who will read for us the statelessness.
Okay. Governance. In the day-to-day administration and legislation, the chief rarely makes policy. When matters of serious consequence arise, the chief first discusses them with his inner or privy council for advice. Then he summons all the members of the council of elders for a meeting. Such matters might include additional tributes, market tolls, proposed new laws, the declaration of war, serious quarrels, and other matters of importance to the community. Adult males may sit in on such council meetings. Traditionally, unanimity is the rule in most tribal systems, which means that the debate can go on for days. The primary reason for insisting on unanimity is the desire for tribal cohesion, unity, and survival. If a councillor, a head of a lineage, is irreconcilably opposed to a measure, he can leave the village with his lineage to set up settlement elsewhere. Generally, routine matters are resolved by acclamation. However, if the council is deadlocked and cannot reach unanimity on a contentious issue, the chief is obliged to convene a village meeting for a final verdict. Thus, the people serve as the ultimate judge or final authority on disputitus issues. While such a village meeting would in general consist only of adult males, some ethnic groups allow the participation of women. At the village meeting, the chief begins by explaining the purpose of the meeting, stating the facts of the issue, and requesting that discussion begin. His advisors open the debate, followed by headmen or elders. Then anybody else, regardless of their station, who wishes to speak or ask questions may do so. If two men stand up together, precedence is given to the more elderly. Speakers stand, bow as a sign of respect, and face the chief. There is freedom of expression, but it must be exercised with reason and respect. After everyone who wishes to speak has had the chance to do so, the senior advisors and headmen sum up and express their own opinion, after which the chief announces the decision. Most tribal laws are straightforward prohibitions, injunctions, affirmations, or adaptations of customary law to new and changing situations. For example, no one may drive a wagon through the village on Sundays, and no one may disturb the peace on this festival day. Note that there are two fundamental requisites for the functioning of a political system geared towards consensus: freedom of expression and participation in the decision-making process by commoners. Dictatorship does not fit this model.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. Let's share our thoughts or our thinking in regards to the text. What do you think about it? Whether you think it's what you can affirm with, what comments can you say about that governance structures and also what has been presented here? Anybody who's free to go first? Basically, from what you've read there in terms of governance, what can you say? What was your comment about it? What was your thoughts about it?
Hello, I came in a bit late. Can I ask a question?
Sister Tapua?
Yes. Am I correct in remembering that last week we were saying some of the tribal groups have elders representing the different lines or the different lineages?
Yes, you said that.
Yes. So for me, one of the outstanding features is that the system, I suppose because of the size of the group, can go back to the people if an impasse is reached, which I don't see happening in our current situation, because a lot of the times we elect people to parliament and we never hear from them.
Sister Tapua, do you think is the so-called modern referendum?
Yes, but our referenda are not a result of impasse, because there is room for people to then go back and make decisions, go back to the people who send them, whom they represent, so that they're included.
Does this also align with some articles in the Constitution that says that the sovereign power belongs to the people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's affecting it, which I think does not work, at least in the Zimbabwean context. Because right now we have a situation where the current sitting chief wants to extend his reign, and he's given MPs money, thousands of US dollars, so that they vote that the constitution be changed. And today, policemen, because of the demonstration tomorrow, found themselves getting paid $50 from nowhere into their accounts. So we seem to have lost what we have here.
But what do you say about the process? He says that the chief rarely makes policy. We've seen chief in the context of presidents today. Is it the same? You see, they also describe the process on which such policy is made by the chief, that when matters of serious concern arise, the process is as follows. The chief first discusses them with his inner circle or council for advice, and then summon all members of the council of elders for a meeting. Such matters they have explained, and people might be sitting in, including adult males may also sit in. How do you think about that?
For me, whilst this may be embedded in our constitutions currently, we have a situation in Zimbabwe where even when the laws are broken by the chief, people kind of assume that he's going to bulldoze everybody to vote for this thing. And he's inaugurating people into positions before the members of parliament have discussed anything, because he's assumed that they're going to be backing whatever he says, despite the constitution. So you have dictators who are just brazenly going over even the constitutions that we have written, which are supposed to protect us from such decisions.
Okay, thank you for that. I think this aspect of chief rarely make policies also sits with the current, what they call executive orders. The president gives executive orders. For example, Trump got in, he gave executive orders, which basically, those are like him making the policies or stating his policies, while there's a process of consultation that should lead to such policies.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to say in regards to that text?
Yes, that the opposition is not labeled negatively, because if you're representing people with a different idea, or if you're representing a different demographic, you're listened to. What we have is a situation where people become partisan and only take into consideration what they think their party wants, whereas the country belongs to everybody. It belongs to everyone, whether you are opposed or you are not. And I think this system works better, which for me kind of points to the need for federation, either at provincial level or some kind of section where that is manageable units that encourage inclusivity.
How about that line that says that if a councillor ahead of lineage is irreconcilably opposed to a measure, he can leave the village with his lineage to set up a new settlement elsewhere?
Yes, I kind of marveled at that, because what happens is, as soon as that division occurs, then the unit is weaker. So rarely do people push that someone else leaves, because the more groups leave, it means there's insecurity embedded within the system and people are prepared. It also means there's lack of wanting to listen to someone, wanting to listen to a position and coming up with a consensus, which is why I think when we're talking about unifying Africa and we're talking about Africa coming as one, we need to accept differences, because we can't just move and go elsewhere.
Can this be part of the reasons why there was settlement all over, as people were saying migration and movement of Africans from one point to another? Can some of this might have resulted from maybe people not agreeing on decisions made by the team? But also, does it also reflect an element of our freedom to make choice? So you are not actually forced or compelled that you must actually be just submissive to something you don't accept.
Absolutely. I was actually thinking about it today when I was reading around the situation in South Sudan with the schism that's there between the two big groups. And I'm thinking, should there be smaller units? Because there's got to be a way of acknowledging our differences, but staying together.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Tapua. Let me give other members who can share their comments on this in the next 9 minutes, and then we can continue with our reading. Anybody who want to come in regards to this text we've read, please feel free to share your comment with us. Anybody who want to share something in regards to this text in terms of the structure and governance? If there will be nobody, we'll proceed to the next text on the statelessness. Barry, are you speaking? Brother Barry, are you speaking? Anybody else who has anything to share in regards to that text? Feel free.
Yes. Can I comment on women, please? Participation of women.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. I'm one of those women who thinks that Africa has been forced to adopt the denigration of women, because I feel Africans value their women. We've got a lot of sayings and situations that elevate women as the center of the home, as a lot of other things, as people who are supposed to be listened to, as the major organizers, and so on. And for me, this is one of the examples that even in tribal societies, women were actively involved. It just did not happen at, was it the women's whatever? We were doing it before anybody else was, because we acknowledge that it's not about hierarchy, it's about cohesion, it's about untu, it's about being and acknowledging everyone's role in a family or a community. I'll pause there.
Thank you. Anyone else who want to come in? Okay. If there's no one, there's another aspect we want to realize here that it says, however, if the council is at a deadlock, and cannot reach unanimity on contentious issues, the chief is obliged to convene a village meeting for a final verdict. Thus, the people serves as the ultimate judge or final authority of disputous issues. I think that's very important, worth noting. I don't know what other countries does, but like in Kenyan constitution, as much as the power has been delegated to members of parliament, there is an element of public participation in some level, where even the delegated members of parliament have to consult the citizens on some matters when the bill are coming to stage before they become law. And I think also sometimes we end up having referendums as well.
Yes. There's something else that's interesting, my brother. The first page, the last line on the first page, then anybody else, regardless of their station, who wishes to speak or ask questions may do so. freedom of speech. You know, it was not regarded as a crime to ask or to state a position. Everybody was free to do so and to do it openly. But we have journalists and other people not being allowed to speak by dictators and having to endure being taken to court and being refused bail and all that rigmarole that goes with it because they want only their words to be heard. So that's very un-African. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sister Tapua. Anyone else? We will go to the next text. Okay, who can read for us the next text on the stateless societies? Hope members present here can hear me.
Yes, if there is no one else I can read, but I will not have to comment. I think it's...
Let me know who is here who can read for us the next text. The texts are highlighted here.
I can read. I can.
Let me first of all know. Samuel Sokiri, can you hear me?
Maybe they can't hear.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay. Sir Windok, are we together?
Yes, I'm listening. I just joined in, man. Network is a challenge.
Okay.
But I think a little bit stable. I will be able to listen for a while.
Okay, okay. I know Sister Chisoma had confirmed that she's somehow engaged a bit, but if she'll be in a position to contribute, she can come in. Brother Hegel, hope you maybe made it to your position or you're still on the road, but hope you're listening to us as well. Hada had confirmed is a bit hard, but I think he's also tuning in. So I believe we're together. Is there anybody who might wish to read the text that is highlighted apart from Sister Tapua? Okay, Sister Tapua, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm starting to read from Stateless Societies.
Yes.
Okay, Stateless Societies. Thomas Jefferson says, I'm convinced that those societies, as the Indians, which live without government, enjoy in their general mass an infinitely greater degree of happiness than those who live under European governments. Quotation from Jean Bryant. The most distinctive contribution of Africa to human history has been precisely in the civilized art of living reasonably, peacefully, without a state or government. When Thomas Jefferson made the statement in a letter to Edward Carrington in 1787 that people who live without government enjoy an infinitely greater degree of freedom and happiness, he was probably referring to stateless societies. Government, in quotation marks, is a necessary evil. It is the leader who can be dispensed with, as in stateless societies. A stateless society or non-state seems almost a contradiction in terms to Westerners, who may see the institution of the state as necessary to avoid tyranny, whilst recognizing that a bad state can impose tyranny. They see the absence of the state as a recipe for chaos. On the other hand, Africans who live in a stateless society tend to see the state as unavoidable tyranny. They seek and find order in other institutions. These societies push the concept of liberty to its most radical extreme and fight fiercely against any hint of tyranny. The Igbo of Nigeria means no words with Ezebulio, which means a king is an enemy. This uncompromising stance explains why the Igbo fought a war, the Biafra War that began in 1967, to secede from Nigeria rather than submit to tyranny. It also underlies the current chaos in Somalia. To guard against, To guard against autocracy, many tribal societies have elected not to have chiefs or any centralized authority at all. Ecological factors and livelihood also play a role in the choice of political system, especially amongst pastoralists. The nature of their livelihood makes centralized systems of government unfeasible. To govern themselves, they have devised viable social systems with their own values, skills, and wealth, and have successfully maintained their societies. The Somali fall into this category, as do the Hmong. During their history, there has not been any one Hmong leader who presided across borders, even though the Hmong have a word for a Hmong nation leader. You must excuse me, I won't read that. The Hmong can be found in northern Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. Political organization. In stateless societies, there are only two units of government, the Council of Elders and the Village Assembly. There is no leader. The maintenance of justice, as well as of cultural and territorial integrity, are effected through the extended family organization and the invocation of kinship behavior, not only in domestic, but in wider spheres. A system of checks and balances is instituted in which two or more power centers are balanced against each other and applied on all levels of the community, so that no single center predominates. There is a wide dispersion of this system across Africa, adopted by such ethnic societies as the Tiv and the Igbo of Nigeria, the Nuer of Sudan, the Somali, and the Bedouin Arabs throughout North Africa. Such societies reach compromises in conflict resolution rather than make judgments and apply sanctions. Thus, sorry, I need to scroll up. Okay. Thus, in many acephalous societies, there is a clear separation between power, defined as the ability to influence events in a desired manner and direction, and authority, meaning the acknowledged or recognized right to exercise power. One does not necessarily flow from the other. The colonialists had great difficulty in dealing with this distinction of stateless societies. They sought leaders with power in such societies, and finding none, They created them. But these leaders lacked authority since they were not part of the kinship group and were treated as external representatives of an alien government. Within the ethnic group, they had little legitimacy or authority, and what little they had was considered tyrannous by the people under them. In fact, the Somali mocked the titles that the British and Italian colonialists created for the officials of the first central government. The president of the Somali Republic, for instance, was called Madan Wayne, which literally means big head. The Somalis pushed the concept of freedom to its most radical limit. They take orders from no one, but their country has been in chaos since 1991. They've not had any effective government since they ousted the late dictator General Said Barre. To Westerners, the chaos in that country reflects the inability to establish a democratic order. But nothing could be further from the truth. Traditional Somali society is peaceful. It is governed by customary law known as sphere, which come very close to natural order. Such societies are described as near-Kritakis. Democracy is incompatible with Kritaki, defined as rule by judges. Hence, the Somali have rabid contempt for government, which they dismiss as the thing. The chaos seen in Somalia is due not so much to the inability to establish a democratic order, but to the rejection of any attempt to impose Waksan on them. The Somali will fight any such thing imposed on them by the political elites, the international community, or Islamic extremists.
Thank you. Very interesting text indeed. Very interesting. There are a lot of so many interesting things that are in this text. Let me first of all ask members here before Sister Poa, who can maybe feel they want to comment something on the text. Anybody want to say something in regards to this stateless societies, based on the text we've read?
Comrade, greetings.
Yeah, greetings, Hada. Comrade, please go ahead.
Yeah, I won't be long, man. Just to welcome this session because it's my first day here. And to congratulate you for running this session, comrades, and thanks for Comrade Tapua for reading as well. So we should continue. I will continue joining this session, even though I'm tired somehow. It's very insightful, comrade. I will read this book as well for future, and I will participate more robustly in the future. And thanks so much. As I've said and indicated earlier that I will be a silent observer as well. So thanks so much. But just to say a few words.
Thank you, Comrade Hada. Thank you very much for joining us as well. You are always welcome. We are trying to do our best to study. They say too much sometimes that we don't read. They say that they have hidden the secret in the books, but now we are going for them. So we are doing our best to read. Thank you so much. Any other comrade want to come in? Any other comrade want to share their comment in regards to the text? Anyone? Oh, comrades, this should be an interactive session. There's a lot of things that have been spoken here or written here that I believe you cannot just leave without saying anything. But we want to open the opportunity for you to share something about them. Because sometimes we don't only read, but also we do discussions a bit so that we can expand our thinking. So So if you have anything you feel like you should be pointing out based on what has been said, always feel free to share with us something. Yeah, welcome, Comrade Ross. You are saying it's your first time joining us. Feel most welcome. Sawindok, do you have anything to say on this text? This aspect of stateless societies, Sawindok?
My network is on and off, breaking, and I'm driving. And as Sister Tapua was reading, I'm not able to read. And as Sister Tapua was reading, I was sketching one word, one is gone, and yeah, so I'm not in a position seriously because I haven't followed.
I can make a comment, comrade.
Please go ahead, sister. They say that every member was allowed to say something, so say something.
Right. I'm fascinated by this. I'm very fascinated by it because for me, it explains why democracy does not work. It explains why, because I used to explain the resistance, for example, for people to not want to pay taxes to the state as arising possibly from having been fighting the colonialists for long. But now I'm getting the answers that, for me, point at why we're persistently kind of refusing to belong to the state. Because in Zimbabwe, for example, people resist belonging to the state. In my particular part of the country where I come from, it does not matter who is head, whether it's opposition or is the current head. People just say what they want, and they say they don't want leadership. And you start wondering, but how do you, because we're so groomed in accepting a leader, accepting the big head, that we are almost convinced to think that we cannot survive without government. And yet here we are, looking back, Sankofa, and looking and seeing that it is possible to survive without government. And government sometimes is tyrannous. Because some of the things that the laws they put in place, just the way they conduct themselves and they don't listen to people, makes Lex Ubuntu. So for me, this is explaining possibly what we need to be looking back at in order to think of how we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are so many things of interest that I'll have to comment on. One is, first of all, from Thomas Jefferson.
Yes.
That I'm convinced that those societies, as the Indians, which live without governments, enjoys their general mass and infinitely greater degree of happiness than those who live under European governments. What then can be the resource? What can then cause this greater degree of happiness to those who live in a stateless society? Is it freedom? Sister Tapa, what do you think? Is it freedom that makes people have this greater degree of happiness?
Yes, I think it's freedom, and it's the ability to remain in control, where the control lies with family units, with smaller units, driving themselves forward, respecting other smaller units. Because in the colonial sense, we've got a government that's imposed on us, and imposed in order to extract from us, which is something that we'd resisted, in stateless societies, where we refuse to be taken advantage of. But now we've got a government which, like I was saying in the other meeting that we had yesterday, the perpetuation of exploitation, even by our current governments that claim to have freed us, but we don't feel the freedom. So freedom, definitely.
It's very interesting as well what Jean Barat says, that most distinctive contribution of African to human history has been precisely in the civilized, not uncivilized, civilized art of living, reasonably, peacefully, without a state. I think it's very interesting when the state came in. Because the state then is a creation of the whites and the Western, sometimes in some of the communities. And that's why they were wondering, when they came and asked about land, what you read last time, and whose land is this? Then they said, the land belonged to us. They expected the land to belong to one person called Peter or John. But they couldn't understand how can the land belong to everyone, and there's no conflict in land, it belongs to everyone. Here is a situation whereby it confirms that those stateless society lived peacefully and very civilized. But today, then they want to defend that you must have a government. And you see the situation they're creating on the Somali issue. They're saying that they think that Somali people have been unable to have a democratic government. Well, in reality, they are opposing that. And I want to ask comments as well in this sentence there that government is a necessary evil. Who think about that? Who believes that government is a necessary evil? This is Chisomo.
Hi. Sorry, I came in late. I've just arrived and I was listening as I was driving. I didn't quite get the stateless bit, but as you're explaining now, I'm kind of getting an idea behind it. So when we didn't have this government, or before these people came and introduced this government system, we managed whatever structures we had. And then if you've already got your structures and it's working, we don't often hear that it wasn't working. We've yet to hear that it wasn't working and why it wasn't working and why we needed a government. But obviously the government wasn't introduced by us. It was by people who had other ideas. Like you say, they asked whose land is this? And then people would say it's ours, and they're thinking, but it can't be yours. Whose exactly is it anyway? If it's not, if you don't know who it belongs to, then let's have this structure, and then this structure will own that land. So that's the way they then, I suppose, take the land, and that's the way they impose the government. So you've now you have now imposed and put another structure on top of another structure. You haven't gotten rid of the previous structure. You've got a new structure on top of it. So this new structure is operating independently of the other structure. So this one is getting on with it. The others are all also getting on with it, but they are technically they are under the new government. Then with the new government, then we're told you need you can't have one political party. You need to have two an opposition to then oppose. I suppose that was their way of thinking. If we don't like that one, let's say it's democratic to have people who also want to stand, compete, and oppose and whatever. Like a system of checks and balances. So that's why we end up with this democracy that we don't understand, because we come from a completely different system, and our system still exists. We still work out under our own systems in the villages and elsewhere. They up to this day they don't understand all this. They literally ignore them. To them, they don't even exist. We've got a vice president right now, who was in the development world and who was comedian, performer, and all that. He's now the vice president. But because that's how his mind works, he's still got to be in the community. And I remember when he was first elected, he said, now you're forcing me to live a different lifestyle. I'm used to be over there doing A, B, C, D. Now you're forcing, this job will force me to live differently. So after a while, he started going back to the community. So now and again, he'll go in the villages, be with the people, just turn up on a village. And people will say, and then the girl who walks around filming him, he will say to them afterwards, do you know who that guy is? And they'll say, no. Do you know who Michael Wusi is? No. He's the vice president. Do you know what a vice president is? No. So that they have no clue what this guy is, what he represents. Some people will even say, oh, Is he the president? Meaning they are so detached from everything. And these are the things you don't see on TV, on media, or no. But this guy is going down there. So we've started following him and thinking, oh, this is how other people live. This is how the different villages live. You can actually see the differences between regions, districts, tribes, how everybody's living their lives, but they have no clue what's happening out there. They have no clue. They don't know who the man is. They don't know who the president is. And then there's another guy who walks around. I think he took after a Ugandan program. I don't know what it's called in Uganda, but he calls it supporter. He will just also turn up in a town on the street. Do you know what we're celebrating today? So it's either on Independence Day or on Mother's Day or Martyrs Day or so and so. And then he will just say, oh, do you know who so and so is? Or do you know what we're celebrating today? Oh, it's the president's birthday. They have no clue. So you then see that there are two completely different systems. These people have set up their own system that they live in. And then there's this other imposed one that we imitate, that we try to conform, and we are failing miserably. And we end up in the state that we are. So stateless society for me do work because people agree, people know what they're doing, what the rules are, and what works and what doesn't. You
Thank
don't
you,
have to
Sister.
go to school for it.
Thank you, Sister
Can I
Chisom.
come in?
Start up, allow you to come in, but I think Sister Chisom is confirming something. That indeed our people, our mentality in their society, in the villages, are still in stateless thinking, which means our people go to their farm, they farm their food, they eat themselves, they trade within themselves, and it's not that the government or the state has anything in that. And basically, maybe the only time sometimes that are aware of a state is when maybe there's an election somewhere, or maybe when they are told there's a member of parliament coming somewhere. But I don't think those persons of states or government in any way interfere with their normal setting. They can still survive without them. Generally, they will still feed themselves, they'll still marry, they'll still take care of their kids, and they'll still do everything else. So this then confirms the contradiction here, which I will read, and Sister Tapo, you can come in. The statement that I violated, that stateless society or non-state seems almost a contradiction in Western, in terms to the Westerners, who may see the institution of state as a necessary to avoid tyranny, while recognizing that a bad state can impose tyranny. They see the absence of the state as a recipe for chaos. But Sister Chisomo's information or what she has narrated confirms that those people exist. It's not that the state has to be there to keep law and order. They exist in their own ways. If somebody stole something in the family, the head has structure on how to correct it. It's not a must for a police to come in. Now, on the other hand, Africans who live in a stateless society tend to see that the state as an unavoidable tyranny. They seek and find order in other institutions. These societies push for the concept of liberty to its most radical extreme and fight fiercely against any hint of tyranny. I don't know what you think, but you see the Nigerians said that Ezigbo in law, which means a king is an enemy. Sister Tapua?
I like that statement. The king is an enemy. You know, sorry, you're scrolling up. I need to go back to the government. You scrolled me out. Oh, yes, thank you. Right. Government is a necessary evil. What I see here is systems of government, systems that reflect the philosophy. The Western world is individualistic and therefore is competitive at an individual level. Government is a necessary evil, therefore, to contain those people who want to grape for themselves, are thinking of themselves only. But in an African context, because of Ubuntu, it's about being, acknowledgement that I can't be unless we are all together. Therefore, there is no need for this tyrannical structure to be imposed on people, because Africans are aware of the importance of respecting other people, of respecting the community, of respecting the family, and acknowledging that we cannot function unless all of us are cooperating. So stateless societies, the state becomes a tyranny. And I'm looking at what you just read, what you highlighted there. Sorry, you've scrolled up too much? Yes. Okay. And there's that section there that says, Africans who live in stateless societies tend to see the state as unavoidable tyranny because we're self-contained as communities, as families. We are not forced to pay taxes. We will look after our neighbors. We don't have structures that have to be imposed so that we look after our elders, or we look after our orphans, or we educate ourselves. It's the systems that we have work. So I think it's philosophical. It's the philosophical differences that give us either state or stateless societies.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. You see, they're also trying to relate the Biafra war on the aspect that the Igbo people are fighting to secede from Nigeria rather than to submit to tyranny.
Yes.
But people might find that they want to secede and form their state, but rather they are against tyranny. And you see, they say in the next paragraph that to guard against autocracy, the societies have, let me highlight this paragraph a bit for purpose of reference, that to guard against autocracy, many tribal societies have elected not to have chiefs or any central authority at all. So those might be forming so many other things, say the ecological or whatever environmental issues, but they say the nature of their livelihood makes centralized systems of governance unfeasible. To govern themselves, they have devised social system with their own values, their own skills, and their wealth, and they have successfully maintained their societies. They have successfully maintained their societies. This is very interesting. Sister Chisomo, you wanted to say something? And anybody want to share something,
Yes.
please come in.
Yes, I was going to come up with the same statement that you finished with. That in my country, Malawi, it's very, very clear. The divisions are extremely clear. There is no mixing one to the other. So, like I said, so you have those people who you will ask them, do you know who the president is? No. Do you know who this man is? No. Do you know what so and so is? No. But they know this guy from previous his dramas, and in his acting name is called Manganya, and he lives in this family, and his son is called Sikono. So when every time he then turns up, sometimes they'll say to them, do you know who he is? And oh yes, we know him. He's Manganya. Oh, he's Bamba Sikono. You know. So, and then it ends there. Do you know that he's the vice president? No. Do you know what a vice president is? No. So you've got these people who have their own structures in the villages that works for them. They have their own government, actually, that they run within themselves. And then you have the young people who have removed themselves from these areas into the urban cities or into the cities or into the ghettos, and they've created ghettos in town to then again govern themselves, literally governing themselves within the governing system, within the city. They've got their own government, which is the statement, the last paragraph you're reading. They've got their own governments. They have their own chiefs. They have their own associations. Everything. There's a problem, they go to each other. They sit. They govern themselves. And it's reached a point whereby, because we're now going to elections, and you have all these political parties coming into these areas to try and campaign. And I remember one of the locations said to them, you do not just turn up without notifying us. You cannot walk into our town to then say, oh, you're holding a meeting without consulting us or asking us or telling us, can you see now, today we are closed down because you've just turned up. We need to prepare and we need to give you permission to come and do a rally or a meeting in this town. So those are the structures that are now coming up because they are used to the way they live in the villages. They do not accept the ruling from the impository one, the government system, whatever they're calling democracy and whatnot. They are governing themselves within area upon area, and they are creating so many of these because they are the majority. They come from the poor backgrounds. They come from the, because of the education system in Malawi, a lot of people are illiterate. So they've created their own systems, literally their own systems, and you can't even go and even disturb it or to say to them, oh, this is what the law is. They do not understand that. They've got their own rules and laws. And then you've got the political parties. And I've seen so many people being interviewed, and they're saying, but meaning the ruling party, they're saying, but they're not governing the country. They don't govern the country. I have not seen at any point where they're governing us. They're busy governing themselves within the political parties. They manage they literally say the president and his ministers and whoever are managing the political party, not the country and not the government. And
Okay.
then you've got the government, which also has its own system. That's why then all this corruption and whatnot, it's a complex system that nobody can even break in. Even if we change presidents, even if we change ministers, nothing is going to change until somebody do the Magafuli on them, sack them all and start all over again. So
Okay. Thank you.
it's just a system upon a system upon a system upon a system. Then when the diaspora goes in, you don't fit in anyway. You're just a lost generation.
Thank you, Sister Chisomo. I want to go to the next paragraph on the next text based on time, but I'm getting one highlight I've put that there is no leader. That is very clear on when Gen Zs in Kenya protested, they say is a leaderless, tribeless, whatever, and people are saying, how does it become leaderless? And when the president reacted to that, he said, these are people who are not organized, they are whatever less and less, so we don't want to speak to them. But in one way, the aspect or the element of absence of a leader in the so-called Gen Z protest made, because the moment some people came up to say, I'm the leader, that's when it died. Because the so-called now the leaders had to meet the president and discuss or join any of the forces. But at the end of the day, they have walked again and joined. But the spirit of the protest is still within the people. And now everybody is a leader in his own capacity. Everybody takes an initiative to go out and shout Ruto must go anywhere they want. And you see, one thing that people don't find makes sense is that, as you read the last paragraph I've highlighted, such societies reach compromises in conflict resolution rather than make judgments and apply sanctions. They always find a way to agree in any conflicting issues. They were not to make judgments or apply sanctions. Like today, if you have any offense, go to court, jail you for many years. Those communities, much as they were stateless, they had a way on how they could resolve their conflicts. Very important.
And this is why when the Europeans came, they were surprised to find there are no prisons.
Yes, indeed. Now, there's one thing, Sister Tapo, as you comment, there's one thing, and other members who are here can comment. There's one thing I want us also to get clear without missing in this aspect of the Somali Republic. What they are saying is very important. That the Somali have pushed for freedom to its most, whatever limit you want to say. That's first thing they say, the most radical limit. They take orders from no one. They take orders from no one. To Westerners, the chaos in that country reflect the inability to establish a democratic order. But nothing could be further from the truth, because traditional Somali society is peaceful. It is governed by customary laws, known as Zia, which come very close to natural law. So you see, there's a bit confusion here. So they say in the last paragraph that the chaos seen in Somali is due not to so much to the inability to establish a democratic order, but to the rejection of any attempt to impose a work zone on them. The Somali will fight any such thing imposed on them by the political elites, international community, or Islamic extremists. They will fight it. Very interesting.
Yes. Can I
Yes.
make a comment on that one too? With the Somalis who've taken refuge in the United Kingdom, particularly in London, they have their own systems that they operate outside the English law. And the people who are trying to give them refuge and protect them and give them services struggle to understand where they're coming from. And you have a subtle conflict because they're saying, we've given you refuge, therefore you must try and abide by the laws of the country. And the Somalis are saying, no, your laws don't make sense to us. We've got our own sense and we want to be able to maintain our sense of being. And there's a great conflict that's happening between the Somalis, particularly the elders, and their children, to such an extent that the British government was fighting the Somali communities because the Somali children were rebelling and the Somali elders were sending their children back to Somalia so that they become as Somali as possible because they were being anglicized.
Oh, thank you, Sister Tapo, for that. Anybody want to comment on this text before we read the next steps on kingdoms? Anybody? Let me get anybody who hasn't.
Can I?
Okay, Sister Chisomo, you can go in maybe for 2 minutes. Who hasn't spoken?
What Sister Tapua has just said, is that not the same as Sharia law, that they insisted on having their own law to govern certain things amongst themselves?
Yeah,
So
the
we have, it has been
Yes.
legalized. It has been legalized. So it's those kind of things that people will just say, no, it doesn't work for us. We're not doing it. You know.
So they have come up with their law, which respect their culture and their values, which was said up there. That they have their own ways of doing their things in their own culture and their own value. I've seen some of them because I interact with some of them, and they say to us, we don't invest on anything that comes with interest. We don't. No matter the interest you want to tell me about that, if you put here, you'll come with this profit. No, we don't do that. And that is something natural in them. Irrespective of where they are, they know it. They won't do it.
The way they lend each other money in the United Kingdom, the government tried to intervene. I remember they nearly, in fact, he did lose his job, one of the ministers, because he came from that community and he was involved in lending money or, organizing things within the community. And they were saying, that's money laundering and whatnot and whatnot. And he says, no, that's how we do. It's against our law to put interest on money that you've lent somebody else. So that's why we have our own system of a financial system amongst ourselves. So they insisted on doing it, and the government has now come to accept it. They can't do much about it.
Thank you. Anybody want to share something in 2 minutes, then we will read the kingdoms? I propose that, and I request members at least to participate also and share their thinking. I know some might be listening for the first time, but feel free to share something. We are not locking you out. Anybody?
Yes. Can I say some? Oh, sorry. Someone else can go if there's someone who wants to speak.
Well, Sister Tapua, to know if someone wants to speak, then I'll come back to you. Anybody? Sister Comrade Hada, Hegel here, Sawindok is here, Rose is here, Sokiri. Anybody want to say something in regards to what you're conversing? Feel free to come in. If no one, then maybe we can go to Sister Tapua. Anybody? Anybody? Okay, Sister Tapua, you can go ahead.
Yes, I'm looking at the sentence. I tried to read you've highlighted something about General Said Barre, that paragraph there. There's democracy is incompatible with Kritachi. How do you read that? Right, that one. Defined as the rule by judges. We've often seen how in democratic states, the the judiciary is captured. And I think this rule by judges is so inhumane. It's against Ubuntu, because we're electing somebody to make a decision about our being based on the laws that they have agreed on and based on the laws that they can manipulate and change. So this is why, for example, in a lot of systems, when a dictator comes into place, they will capture the courts. And therefore, everybody cannot go, anyone who's an ordinary person who is on the opposite side cannot go to court and receive justice. But justice should not be centered around judges. It should be centered in the hands of the people who know what justice means for them. So I just thought I would highlight that.
Okay, thank you, Sister
but then,
Tapo.
but then you have to pay in order to access that justice. So what's the point? If you have no
Exactly.
money, you
It becomes
can't.
unjust. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to the next reading on kingdoms? Anybody who can read for us the kingdoms? Anybody who is willing to read the kingdoms?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll be,
Sister
thank
Chisomo
you.
can read the kingdoms.
No,
Sister Chisomo?
somebody wanted to read.
No, Sister Tapo had been reading the 2 paragraphs because
All
the
right.
but you
Okay.
can read for us the kingdom.
Is that kingdoms? Okay. Beyond villages and chiefdoms, indigenous people have also organized themselves into kingdoms and empires. Kingdoms ruled by monarchs are more numerous in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, may consist of chiefdoms of people of the same ethnic stock. Most are confederations of independent republics of chiefdoms. The Ashanti, the Ga kingdoms, for example. Although different tribal societies may have different concepts of their kings, African natives have traditionally accepted their king as the necessary evil. He is necessary for the preservation of this social order, but he is a potential danger because he can abuse this power and trample on the independence of freedom of his people. To resolve this dilemma, many African ethnic groups created with various degrees of success a person who is hidden from public view, but whose aspiring authority can be invoked to maintain order and harmony. This is akin this 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 is akin to the tooth fairy or Santa Claus in Western culture, of which Western children are in awe. The equivalent is traditional African political culture, is the divine king. In the political culture is the divine king. He is scheduled and his everyday life is planned down to the minute, detailed and loaded
Sister
with
Chisomo?
society.
Sister
Hello,
Chisomo?
hello.
He is secluded. It's very important we capture that he is secluded. Please proceed.
Where is that? Okay.
He is secluded.
Let me enlarge it a bit. Okay, now I can see. Right. So where am I?
And you can go slowly in your reading if you like as well. But he is secluded. Let me highlight for you where you are.
No. It's okay. I've enlarged the text. He is okay. He is secluded, and his everyday life is planned down to the minute, detailed and loaded with socially useful taboos. His sex life, symbolically fused with his fertility and vigor, might be severely restricted. His most elementary physical functions, such as crying, eating, drinking, or defecating, are ritually controlled, and his movements are hemmed in by taboos. These taboos have applied to all African chiefs and kings. Most of these restrictions were designed to reduce the king to an executive non-entity, to curtail the discretionary use of political power and to confine him to his palace, where he would keep his royal fingers out of people's business and private lives. As a remote, secluded, and utterly ritual figure, the king can also serve as a convenient scapegoat when things go wrong. As long as the king is prepared to obey these restrictions, some ethnic groups, in fact, do not care who the king is or where he came from. If he fails to perform his duties, he is disposed of. Regicide is embedded in divine kingship. Although it has been outlawed in most traditional societies since the beginning of the 20th century, the custom stems from the belief in the unity of the king and the kingdom. The king is directly responsible for the prosperity or failure of the kingdom and can thus be held responsible for conditions in the kingdom. Should he become ill or weak, the kingdom will be in danger. Should conditions in the kingdom be bad, there must also be something wrong with the king. Oops. An understanding of the role of the king necessitates a brief discourse on traditional belief systems. Indigenes believe their universe is composed of three elements: the sky, the world, and the earth. The sky is the domain of spirit of both the living and yet to be born, as well as powerful forces such as lightning, thunder, rain, and drought. The earth is the domain of the dead ancestors and other dead tribesmen, as well as of the activities of the living, such as agriculture, fishing, and hunting. The world is peopled by the living, and is therefore the domain of war, peace, trade, and relations with other tribes. Each of the three orders is represented by a god, each of which must be in perfect harmony with the others. The sky god is often taken to be supreme. The king role is to appease or propitiate the three gods and achieve harmony among them, thereby ensuring prosperity for his kingdom. If the sky god is angry, there will be thunder, heavy downpours, and flooding. And if the earth god is angry, there will be poor harvest, famine, and barren women. For comparative purposes, the kings of medieval Western Europe also had three fundamental duties to ensure the spiritual welfare. Europe also, right, where am I? For comparative purposes, the kings of medieval Western Europe also had three fundamental duties: to ensure the spiritual welfare of people by acts of piety and the protection given by the true faith, to defend their people against outside enemies, and to safeguard justice, peace at home. According to historian Basil Davidson, the form of kingship might be different. The content in Africa and Europe was essentially the same. The difference, however, lies in the political roles. While African kings have little or no political role, medieval European monarchs had vast political powers. In ancient China, the people worshipped many different gods, weather gods, sky gods, and also supreme gods named Shadi, who ruled over the other gods. However, the ancient Chinese also had gods for misfortune. Drought, for instance, was personified by goddess Ba, the daughter of heaven. Can you highlight where I am? Okay, thunder and lightning were represented by the gods Li Ku and Li Zi. disastrous floods by Gong Gong. By the beginning of the Zhou dynasty, about 1100 BC, the Chinese were also worshipping a natural force called Tian, which is usually translated as heaven. Like Shakti, Tian ruled over all the other gods. It also decided who should rule China. The ruler could rule as long as he or she had the mandate of heaven. It had believed that the emperor or empress had lost the mandate of heaven when natural disasters occurred in great numbers, and when more realistically the sovereigns when more realistically the sovereign had apparently lost his concern for people. In response, the royal house would be overthrown and a new house would rule, having been granted the mandate of heaven. The king thus has two roles to play in a traditional society: political as head of the kingdom, and spiritual as the link to the universe. The king's role in governance is small, and his participation in the political decision-making is insignificant. He makes hardly any policy and delegates almost all of the political authority to other officials. His advisors, the chief, determine policies and present them for royal assent. The king's primary role is to maintain cosmological power balance and therefore social order. This emphasis on the spiritual function of the king means a separation of kingship and political leadership. In modern times, this tradition, the separation of the spiritual role from politics, has been maintained. For example, in Europe, Kingdom of Norway, the Netherlands, and Britain. In Asia, the Thai king stays out of politics. Notable exceptions to this separation of roles are Middle Eastern monarchs and two African kings. Let me do that again. So, notable exceptions to this separation of roles are Middle Eastern monarchs and two African kings. King Muhammad VI of Morocco and the King Swati III of Swaziland. Most tribal societies seclude their kings in their palaces. The Yoruba king Oni can only leave his palace under cover of darkness and appears in public only once a year. In some tribal systems, no one can see the king eat. He may not walk in cultivated fields, lest the fertility of the soil be affected. Among the Suku of the Democratic Republic of Congo, when the king drank, those present had to cover their faces, while one of the attendants recited proverbs and saying, recapitulating historic events, praising the king for his good deeds, and also hinting at those where he had shown himself to be unjust. Despite the puffed up image of divinity, African kings, for example, are really scapegoat kings, blamed for any calamity that might befall the kingdom. If any of three gods is angry and there is famine, it means the king has not ruled well and has lost. As the ancient Chinese would have said, the mandate of heaven. The Kerebe of northwest Tanzania deposed their Omukana kings at the beginning of the 19th century. Rahinda, who was unable to prevent an excessive amount of rain from falling, and his successor, Ibanda, who fell victim to an extended period of drought. Can somebody take over?
Right.
Can somebody take over?
Yes.
Okay, let me finish.
Again, note that despotism does not fit into this traditional kingship. With kings secluded in their palaces, seldom seen barking orders in public, there is no such thing as a despotic king. And traditional kings pay the ultimate price of accountability should a misfortune befall the kingdom. Today's despots who leave such massive trails of destruction and chaos don't know how lucky they are. Should I continue?
No, we end it there.
All right.
Oh,
My sister finished.
it's been
I tell you, this world.
it's been a very also interesting reading here.
Absolutely.
Looking at how the kings existed, how they could be tamed and controlled, how to ensure that there were no dictators, how they could be blamed and removed, is a whole lot of very interesting, I think, analysis that is also educative to us. But I'll allow members who might want to point out one or two things they find is interesting for them to comment on to please go ahead. In my chat list, is there anybody want to comment on these kingdoms or what you've heard about the kings? Anybody? Let me know. There are things that are of interest to me, and I would like to highlight them as I also maybe seek a contribution from members. That one is that the African traditions, although this is very important for me to highlight here, I'll highlight it, but yeah, for my comment. The second paragraph says that although different traditional society may have different conceptions of their kings, the African natives have traditionally accepted their king as a necessary evil. Not as a good person, but as a necessary evil. He is necessary for the preservation of social order, but is a potential danger because he can abuse his power and trample on the independence and freedom of his people. That's very important. Why did people find the king as a necessary evil? It's for two things: for their independence as persons and for their freedom. I think that's the origin of the current quote that says power, absolute power corrupts, or power corrupts, and those sort of things. But that is the challenge they had in a society. But again, they had a divisive way on how they could control it. So they say, to resolve this dilemma, many African ethnic groups created various degrees of success. A person who is hidden, that is the king, who is hidden from public view, but whose hour inspires authority, can be invoked to maintain order and harmony. This is akin to the tooth fairy of the Santa Claus in Western culture. It's very interesting how you use that, of which Western children are in awe. The equivalent in traditional African political culture is the divine king. He is secluded. That is very important here. He is secluded, and his everyday life is planned down to the minutes, detailed, and loaded with socially useful taboos. Is very important. His sex life symbolically focused with his fertility and vigor might be severely restricted. Very important as well. Today we have presidents who have children all over. His most elementary physical functions such as crying, eating, drinking, or defeating are ritually controlled. Today we have presidents who can cry anywhere in the church, crying for God and everything else. And his movements are harmed by taboos. These taboos have applied to all African kings and chiefs, I want to still move on those restrictions, then we can ask people to comment. Most of these restrictions were designed to reduce the king to an executive non-entity, on an entity, to curtail the discretionary use of political power. So you see, there was an element of Africa recognizing that the king can be a necessary evil if he overuses his power wrongly. So they want to curtail that power and to confine him to his palace, where he will only keep his royal fingers out of people's business and private life. As
I
a
love that.
remote, secluded and utter ritual figure, a king can also serve as a convenient scapegoat, convenient scapegoat when things go wrong. As long as the king prepares to obey this restriction, some ethnic groups, in fact, do not care who the king is or where he comes from. Very interesting. Now, it goes ahead. I'll read that part and then allow members to share the thinking. If it says, if he fails to perform his duty, he is disposed of. Regicide is embodied in divine kingship, although it has been outlawed in tradition. The custom stems from the belief in the unity of the king and the kingdom. The king is directly responsible for the prosperity or failure of the kingdom. And today, our presidents have failed, but they blame the members of parliament or the fire ministers, or they say one or two things, or IMF and the rest of the things. And thus, be held responsible for conditions in the kingdom. Should he become ill or weak, the kingdom would be in danger. Should conditions in the kingdom be bad, there must also be something wrong with the king. Any comments on that?
Who would want to be king?
Sister Papa, go ahead. Then I'll go to Sawindo. Sister Papa?
Who would want to be king? I mean, the consolation was they were possibly living in relative luxury. But for me, it points out the human need to have a superpower, someone that people can refer to or defer to, and the need to go, because they had a belief in a God. That's why they had all these gods. But there's also a need to create someone who's in human form that they can defer to. And it's not fair on the king because of the restrictions. You'd have to bear all this.
Hold on, Sister Papa. You say it's not fair on the king.
It's absolutely not fair on the king. I mean,
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, coming out to the public once a year.
Eating.
Oh,
It's just... You shouldn't be laughing.
But what do you want to
I was having problems reading and I thought, no.
What do you want to do in the public? Why do you want to come regularly in the public? You tell them what? They're your handmen, there are people you meet, you tell them instructions, they go do what is needed. Why is your face always to be in the public?
So why do we need a king? Particularly because the king could be killed. That's regicide. If we believe that the kingdom was going wayward because of him, we'd kill him.
But there's somewhere they've said the purpose of the king was only to connect two things. I don't know why is it. Yeah. There's somewhere they've said the reason why they needed a king in a society. Let me see if I'll find it. But there's somewhere that was said. But yes, go ahead. Continue sharing what you want to share.
Yeah, because I would rather be Somali and have no king. I'd rather be Igbo and have no king and get society to self-regulate. But the need to have somebody whom we give power, but we're also scared of how they're going to use the power, and therefore we have to seclude them, is a tricky one. My interest would be in Muswati, and the differences that Mswati has with other kings because of how he rules his people. He's got both political power and other power. He doesn't hide. He kind of uses marriage as a way of stitching the kingdom.
Yes,
I
yes.
don't, because everybody then feels, oh, we've got ours in the palace, we've got ours in the palace, and whilst some of the
And that,
examples of given here are trying to restrict the sexual whatever of the king, we've got the opposite taking place in Swahili.
and and
I
also
failed to
he's
Okay, Sister Tapua, Sister Chisom, what do you wanted to say, please? Come in.
no, I was thinking about King Swat, and I'm thinking because of that exclusion, he then decides I'm going to create my own kingdom within the kingdom. I'm going to have 20 wives or how many ever these people are, and have my own little city, like the Vatican, I suppose, so that if I don't have to go to the public, then I can do whatever I need to do with all these people. And looking at all these other kingdoms, I hear a lot of mention of palaces and all sorts, and I watch Nigerian movies, and they live in all these houses and workers and chairs and gold and this. And I'm thinking of the chief in Malawi. They don't have that luxury. They live in the village like everybody else, amongst everybody else in poverty. Actually, there was another chief that was arrested just 2-3 days ago, and there was a picture of him in handcuffs. I wanted to post it to the group, but I didn't think people would understand why I'm posting it to show you how a Malawian chief looks. So, and that's why they don't even live in the village. They live in town to try and find a job and feed themselves. So, so all these palace things and all these things that I mentioned here, but I do hear people saying, "Oh, the gods are angry." You hear that a lot. The gods are angry. There's no
Yes.
rain. Oh, whoever has is punishing the country because of what people are. They say what people are doing, or the leaders. Um, Not necessarily the chief, or maybe they do say the chief, but you do hear the gods are angry, that these are angry, that are angry. So they know how to connect the things that are being mentioned in the book. But I felt sorry for the chief, who, if the rain
But when you have the presidents today who have excessive power and misuse it, we also complain about them. When you have a chief with the limited power, we are sorry about the chief and the king.
So
Yes.
imagining this chief being told that there's no rain, or there's too much rain, or there's this and that, it's your fault, therefore go. And he has to leave when it had nothing to do with the guy.
let me hear what Sawindo. Let me hear what Sawindo want to say. Sister Tapua, hold on a bit. Sawindo, please come in. Sister Tapua, I'll go back to you, please. Sawindo, your mic is unmuted. Please come in. Or can T hear me? I want to get somebody who can help me in between the sisters here because the sisters are on fire. But I really want to get some support. Anybody who is willing to come in, first of all, I want to calm down the fire in the sisters. Because the sisters are very sorry for a king, but they'll also be very mad at a king that exclusively live a luxurious life. Anybody want to help me? If there's nobody, I'll have to deal with them. Okay, Sister Tapua, come in.
What comes to mind for me is how the Chinese government behaves when leaders are seen to be corrupt. They hang them, they sentence them to death. And I've often thought maybe in Africa we need to do that too, because we reward our corrupt leaders with more power, and we just kind of turn a blind eye, because on the one hand, we know we can survive without them. And for me, like my sister was saying, the imposition, the maintenance of two systems where we live under one system we set up systems that function for in our favor. And this imposed government here is just there to take taxes and to punish us, an inconvenience. And they want it, for example, in Zimbabwe, statistically, unemployment is say between 85 and 90%. But if you were to fly into Zimbabwe today, the amount of economic activity going on, the amount of houses that are being built, and the government is left to collect taxes. And now they're trying to pursue anyone who puts any building up. They were talking of taxing the villagers. You need to complete an annual return in the village of how many goats you had this year and how many you have at the end of the year, and submit them. And I'm saying these guys are getting mad, absolutely mad. Because if they can control taxes from people who are formalized, how are they going to control any taxes from anybody who has got a fowl run of 100 chickens? You
No,
want somebody to meet a return. It's totally
Sister,
mad.
Sister Topua, don't you see how government is unnecessary evil?
It's not a necessary evil. It's an unnecessary evil. We need to go back to being stateless.
Yes,
Because remember,
that's what I'm
there's
saying.
someone,
As you're saying, it now goes to the infringing the freedom and independence of persons.
yes, because I think someone, I'm not sure which group, I'm in too many meetings. Somebody published the number of states, number of countries that don't tax their citizens. They use resources, natural resources that are got from and mined by government.
I'm the
Tax
one
them.
who posted that, Sister Tapua.
Yes. I mean, this could be one way in which the state could leave us alone so that we live our lives. I'm rebellious.
But look at the last part of this sentence. That again, based on the explanation that the king has been described here in the paragraph from the beginning, then the author says, again, note that despotism does not fit into this traditional kingship. Really, how could the despotism survive in that? With the king secluded in their palace, seldom seen backing orders in the public, there is no such a thing as a despotic king. And traditional kings pay the ultimate price of accountability. Ultimate price. Should a misfortune befall the kingdom. Today despots will leave such a massive trail of destruction and chaos. Don't know how lucky they are. I think we need to still hold the highest level of accountability to whoever becomes the president. It's not even in matters of whether it's calamity or not. But if you put stringent measures, look at, for example, measures here, they should not drink in public, there's sexuality, and many other things. This one in my constitution is actually under chapter 6 of our Kenyan constitution called the Integrity Act, that prescribe on how the leader must be integral, and not only the leader. In fact, the constitution of Kenya under article 72 or 73 says, any state officer hold that office in public trust and must act in a manner that bring honor and dignity to that office. So you find people drinking up and down all over, marrying everywhere, having women and giving birth all over, up and down, speaking and doing. That is not actually proper. So there's a code why the king has to be given stringent measures in terms of his life, experience, or how he lives in his lifestyle, so that he is not actually drunk with power. When you put more restriction to such a king, you make them not even to think of all these so many things, and they were attached with taboos. Very important thing, taboos. So I think the traditional Africans, having realized that of course kingship was more of evil, they had to find a way to deal with it, and they dealt with it. But today we still think that's not evil. We think it's a very good thing to have, and therefore we are not coming with proper measures on how to deal with these people. The president is above the law in many countries. How could they be above the law?
Yeah,
How?
I think whilst traditional African societies attributed any natural phenomena as happening because of the king. I think we need to hold our leaders accountable. If unemployment rises by a certain percentage, then they shall be hung. I mean, because we've got to find a way. If roads are not repaired, because, for example, in Zimbabwe right now, people are talking about how telecommunication companies, for every data that we pay, a certain percentage goes to government. And in 23, 24, 37 million US dollars was given to government. And people are saying in the last 7 years, since the law was put in place, how much has been raised and where has it been put to? And in such instances, if there is no accountability, then people should know that I'm going to occupy this position, and if I'm not effective and I can't explain myself, I shall be hung.
And that's the thing. If the chief has got all these restrictions and this is your fault if this happened, doesn't, why haven't the other leaders got the same rules? In the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister is in Parliament almost every session to answer every single question. But in our countries that took the same system of governance, I would have thought, the president never appears in Parliament. So
No.
those ministers are busy organizing, making rules, doing this, doing that. He is not involved in any of it. And then when things go wrong, the president. The guy has no clue where it came from, or where it went, or who started it, or who finished it. You know? So when these guys are going out there or whatever, these days my president cannot go on the street without being stoned. He can't go anywhere. Because at the end of the day, what are you here for? People ask. Go away.
Thank you. I think we will not go to Confederacies based on our time, but we allow more interrogation of whatever we have been reading here and more comments to still come in, because there are many things that actually is very interesting. But I think this book is written Defeating Dictators. That's the title of the book. And tyranny or tyrannic leadership is more of dictatorship leadership. And I really like, as much as we have counter opinion, I really like how traditional African found a way to try and deal with these so-called dictators that could come up. And these measures, as much as they might be stringent, I believe, like even in the Christian doctrines of those who are called pastors and preachers, there are still some policies within the Bible and the doctrines that still limit them to so many other things. Something that there are a lot of taboos and rules of what the pastor should not do or do what and what and what. And I think those measures, even though of late they have been abused or misused, but actually it has helped that system to survive. If there's no proper order and code of conduct on how things should be done, there is a possibility of the kings and the leaders abusing their power at their hands, including how they do in most of the countries. So when we protest, the order will be short. That's why they are not supposing the public. But I want to, I know Sister Tapoya, Chisomi, your hand is back, but I want to point on something here I see as well, which I really like to get your opinion on, where they say the king thus has two roles. I think somebody was asking about the king. Let me read that. The king thus has two roles to play in a traditional society. One is political, as the head of the kingdom. And second is spiritual, as the link to the universe. So the king's role in governance is small, and his participation in political decision-making process is insignificant. He makes hardly any policy and delegates almost all his political authority to other officials. His advisors and his chiefs determine policies and present them to royal assent. we have presidents with ministers, advisors, and the rest. But in some other country, like in Kenya, we believe, in fact, it's the president that advises the advisory council. He doesn't take any advice from the advisors. He is rather the one advising the advisors. And there is where the delegation of authority to other leadership is also missing in most of the kingdoms in Africa, or in most of the levels in Africa. Today, a president want to go and launch a transformer or a one poles of electricity somewhere. Or there are leaders in that area that should do that. These are very interesting terms, but yes, Sister Chisomo coming as I'm trying to look for something that is very important that I wanted to ask to highlight. Sister Chisomo? Sister Chisomo, you are free to come in. I'm trying to look for something I want to comment.
Sorry, I didn't unmute my phone. Yes, the word dictatorship in itself is problematic, because from what we're reading here, or what I have been understanding, who then becomes the dictator? Because the chiefs are subject to certain rules and certain restrictions and whatnot, and are insignificant at some point and powerful in others, in other states. And then you have, like I said, all these structures. Then you have the imposed government, then you have the president in other countries, then you have, in addition to the prime minister, you have the king and queen, like we have. Where lies in the dictator? Because I was thinking about it yesterday, just not about this book, but about this dictator. I can't remember what I was writing or reading about. And I was thinking, is this why in the old days when we had the first presidents who took us into independence, that I think it was out of the lesson yesterday, which I joined midway, because the Europeans wanted control, and these new African leaders were kind of blocking them, then they decided to call them dictators. That was my thinking. They started calling these leaders, all of them dictator, this one Idi Amin dictator, Gaddafi dictator, Kamuzubanda dictator, this one dictator, simply because they are not allowing them access. You need multi-party, you need this and that, so the other side can let them in. That's why I thought maybe the dictatorship, because looking back now, we are appreciating those leaders than we appreciate the ones now in place now. We are thinking those ones were much better. We were living much better then. So reading this book now, it's bringing a different aspect to it.
Sister Chisomo, the terms defined at the beginning of this book, they said the terms despot, autocrat, tyrant, and dictator are used interchangeably throughout this book to offer a ruler with absolute or unlimited power, but there are subtle differences. A despot may be more reminiscent of a medieval monarch who are convinced that they were endowed with the divine right to rule over their people. In other words, despotism is often infused with a dose of narcissism. An autocrat may have no such grand illusions about himself, but he still wields enormous power. A tyrant is a ruler who exercises power oppressively and harshly. The word dictator may be more applicable to a ruler with a military background who backs order, issues dictats or edicts, and expects full compliance and obedience. It is possible to make other distinctions such as benign or benevolent dictatorship, but this book do not do that. Yes. Is it a bit helpful?
Yeah,
it
is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I missed the first session, so I didn't see this bit. But yeah, I was going through it yesterday and I was thinking, I can't remember what I was watching or reading, and I thought, I think that's where the Europeans termed our leaders dictators, because they were being denied access. So I suppose it comes in different forms. That's right.
Yes, that's very important, and thank you for raising it. But there's There's a concern I was having. I don't know if time will allow me. I'm trying to look for it. We are having 5 minutes to go, but I'm trying to look for something here that I really wanted us to look at in terms of the kingdoms as well. We've looked at the other part of governance, which I think here we are learning something. Basically, there is something we are trying to reconnect and learn. But I believe it's also useful to some of us as we share our thinking. We may not agree fully with what the writer is saying. We can question and criticize, but rather we are also trying to learn something from what the writer is trying to say. There's something I want. No, the sky gods. I wanted to get to those gods.
Mhm.
The three elements that was mentioned. I don't know whether it was mentioned: the earth, the sky, and something
Yes,
like that. Where was it mentioned?
just where you are, just on that page where you are.
Where?
Each of the three orders.
Yeah, where is it? I'm trying to look at it.
Yeah, just where your cursor is.
Oh, each of the three orders. But I wanted to get to where the orders are actually highlighted first, because there's somewhere the orders are being introduced.
Yeah, above it.
Yeah, here. Let me have this. An understanding of the role of the king. Let me highlight it. Negotiates a brief discourse on the traditional belief system. The indigenous believe their universe is composed of three elements. This is very important: the sky, the world, and the earth. So the sky is the dominion of spirits, both of living and yet to be born, as well as powerful forces such as lightning, thunder, rain, and drought. The earth is the domain of the dead ancestors, under the dead tribesmen, as well as the activities of the living, such as agriculture, fishing, and hunting. The world is peopled by the living, and it's therefore the domain of war, peace, trade, and relations with other tribe. I think this is more informative to me on how the traditional African viewed their universe as a domain of those three elements. I find it very, very interesting. And they then go ahead and say that each of the three orders is represented by a god. So we never had one god, and that's why we say gods. And people then, the Western religion will come and say we were worshipping whatever. But we believe that each of the three order had their gods. So there was that each of whom must be in perfect harmony with others. Perfect harmony, that coordination. So the sky god, there's the god of whatever, and the king was supposed to have harmony of the three. Which means you have to have the harmony of the sky, harmony of the world, and the earth itself. It's very important. This is more of educative to me. It might not be of more of a discussion, but it's very important in aspect of being educative to us. For example, when you look at the sky, for example, today in the modern world, they talk of climate change, ozone layer, what and what. It's more of in the domain of the sky.
Mm.
But if you look at our earth, we believe the connection between the dead and the living in the present, we are sharing this present space is also very important, because some of the Western religion believe that, of course, our dead ancestors are dead and they are gone. But the element that we share within the same space and they are within the same circumference and that we need to have peace and everything else. So the role of the king goes beyond the living, but also of the dead. So he must work with the harmony also to appease the spirits of also the dead and the living. This is also very important as what I'm seeing here. So I think as we come to the end of this, we will proceed with this study. When now we look at confederacies, which we are thinking we'll look at today, and the empires. Those are what is missing. The confederacies or confederates. The word will be good. Yeah, confederacies and the empires. We'll be looking at them in our next class, and then that will bring us to the end of these chapters, empires, so that the next chapter we will be looking at something else, which is on the indigenous cabs against despotism. We'll extend a bit on what we have already started, but we'll be looking more of how the society actually found a way to deal with this. Permit me to thank you all for your attendance today. If there's anybody who has any final remark they want to say, please feel free to come in now.
Just to say, I was a bit excited today, and I think I was hanging everyone. I just didn't mean it that way. I was exaggerating.
South Africa,
Sawindok, I was struggling to have you come in. Are you able to come in?
I only now, you are closing.
But I can give you time to speak. It's not that restricted so much.
No, I don't have much to say. It's just that the realm of the earth and the three elements.
Yes. What do you want to comment on in regards to that?
It's very important in the African sense, especially in my tradition. That is also kind of what we believe in. If you are
Oh,
a leader, you must be in harmony with the three elements. If one of them is not in congruence or is not in harmony, then the nation is befallen by famine and all those evils. So Africans are
Holistic.
very, what are you saying, Sister Chisomo?
No,
no,
I just
just
said
Africans,
holistic.
yeah, very much so. It must be in complete congruence, and then everything will be, there will be peace, there will be harmony, there will be a good harvest, there will be no war, there will be just the good.
Hmm.
That's all I wanted to say. And also that next session will only be for gentlemen, just like this session was only for the ladies.
I thank you. I called for the gents to come and anybody else even to save me, but they were silent. I hope, as you said, the gents will come in so that we have a conversation of both of us rather than the sisters trying their best. And I appreciate sometimes the sisters to come in and give this. Most of the time, you find sisters don't also contribute much, like in the traditional African society where women could also
Yeah.
be given opportunity. But we appreciate when they come in, but we also request our brothers and sisters also to join us. Sister Chisomo?
Yeah, all I needed was going to say I was all along I was hoping somebody would join in who understands these things because for example myself I'm reading from ignorance and understanding things in a strange way. So if I've offended somebody by laughing and things like that, it's because I'm I'm trying to relate, and from things that I hear that I never understood why people say what they say or do what they do. This book is clarifying some of the things and going even deeper. So to some of us it's very strange, and to some like is it Windhoek has just said, some of them are their beliefs and they believes in them. And I was hoping somebody would come and confirm to say, actually, that's what they practice. So hopefully next week, we'll hear more from people who understand. Because some of us only watch them. We watch the Nigerian films and you're thinking, is that drama? Is that real? But it is people's traditions. They have researched and they're just playing the way things work in the real world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, you've raised some very important thing. The author of Go Next Online even to highlight some communities, point some examples. I think is an apposition of the research work that was put as well. And it's very interesting that we are all readers, but in the reading, we also discuss to learn. We may not be perfect on this, but we have somebody who has done research. So it's a matter of us understanding, trying to question, or even trying to relate it to the current day-to-day activity. Sister Tapua, you have something to say as we close?
Yes. I think for me, it's explaining what Africanness is, because we don't exist as individuals. We exist in communities and we exist in our past because we revere those who have gone before us. And we also are responsible for those who are coming after us. We never find a situation where an African will say, it's just me. When I die, I'm gone. And I don't care what's happening to the ozone layer, after I've gone. We look at existence as being in more than the space that I occupy today, because I am my ancestor's child and I am tomorrow's ancestor. And that actually makes people live in love and harmony and want to continue with the tradition and respect of Ubuntu. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member within our midst who want to say something before we end? Anybody who want to? Yes, Sokiri?
Thank you, really. I would like to apologize. My voice is very terrible. I'm having a cough. But, well, I had been going through the discussion. It is really very interesting, especially to shed light on the government system actually being able or being tyrants to its citizens. Sometimes it reflect me to one of a famous writer, that is George Orwell, who in his book, in the Animal Farm, he demonstrated animals actually complaining of the animal keeper being the problems to their liberty, and the only way for them to get right of their freedom is to get right of the person who take care of them. And when they were so successful in their plans, and then we find that others actually took up to the position of acting actually in the same manner. They had their constitution where they say all animals are equal. In that they begin changing the constitution. All animals are equal, but other animals are more equal than the other. When we look now in the history of our independence, we find that we had been searching for freedom, we had been searching for liberty, and we say our only way for us to be free, it is we have to struggle for our independence. We have to make sure that we have to drive the white man away from our government setting. But again, when these leaders come, when these foreigners come, we drive them out. We are being ruled by our leaders. They also act the same in the same actually manner. They become actually the new Wajungus to rule. So there is something that I would like to cite about, like for example, in United States of America, when they are creating their government, the legislatures agreed that they wanted to create a government that would be too weak to become tyrants to its government, and they were actually very successful in balancing up of power between the federal power and the state power, and they were really very successful in a sense that the government should not be so tyrants to its people or to the state. And then after a certain period of time, we see the American Civil War, where it becomes difficult for the federal government to control other states that resist slavery. But as time continued, they continue to balance up the power. And when we look actually, United States of America today, actually it becomes a best example of good governance, and that is what looking at African states and societies. If we could look at if we could be in this manner, could actually be much better. Me, I'm a South Sudanese, and what is happening in my country is one man in total control of every system, whether the legislative system, the members of parliament, the governors, the commissioners, the what of you, he has the power to remove, to bring in, to remove. In other words, the citizens of the country, they don't have any power, they don't have a say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sokiri. We are actually with you in what's going on in Sudan. And I think one of the way to reduce the dictatorship or despotism is by decentralizing power rather than centralizing power. But yes, we'll have this conversation as we move along. Thank you for joining us. And we are really with you both in South Sudan and Sudan in what's going on over there. Egel or Hada, we are closing. I don't want to lock you out. Of course, we've had conversation with the sisters, but I'm giving you an opportunity to share something before you close. Hegel or Hada? Any of you? Professor or Hada? Any of you want to say something before you close? Okay. I believe that then maybe you are not in a position to say something. Professor Hegel or Comrade Hada. And in that line, then permit me to thank you all. And thank you for your activeness, sisters. Indeed, you bring the discussion to be more lively. And I wish if all of us could be able to engage the text the way we are engaging with it, with the sisters have done today, we can actually learn more. We are actually here to read, but we are not only being a reading of we read and finish, we also help and try to also share our thinking. But thank you very much for your time, and let's meet again on next Saturday or Sunday as we proceed to what I've already mentioned below. And we look forward to learn more and more. We are here to learn, and through reading, they say the secrets are in the book. So we are trying to unlock the secrets, and I hope we continue to grow big, and we continue to make some more impact and learn, because we need a conscious Africans who are ready to help and liberate the continent. So thank you very much for your time, and you all have a lovely evening. See you again next Sunday.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.